Your point of view. The League of Villains had tried kidnapping Katsuki Bakugo to make him join them. When that didn't work, they went into a frenzy trying to figure out ways to sway the could-be hero into joining them. Rikon's mission were sent to watch over him, spies on his every move. That's how they found you. You didn't go to UA with Katsuki, unfortunately. You would have loved to go to school with your boyfriend, but you didn't pass the exam. Your quirk wasn't exactly robot compatible, but he still made a point to see you as often as he could, though you knew how busy he was. Katsuki had just left your house when everything went wrong. You had come over to study after school. Even though you didn't go to the same school, you took similar classes. You had worked for about an hour before having dinner, and then Katsuki had to go back to his dorm. You always worried about him walking back there ever since he got kidnapped in his first year at UA. But that was almost 2 years ago. Not less, you always made him text you the second he got back to the campus. You were washing the dishes from dinner when you heard a knock on your door. Your eyebrows furrowed together in confusion as you put a bowl back into the soapy sink and washed your hand off with a towel. Maybe Katsuki had forgotten something when he'd left and he just came back to get it. You walked back over the door and opened it, assuming it was your boyfriend. It was not. A girl stood in front of you in a dirty school uniform. She appeared average, but something looked wrong. Something wasn't right. "Hi, listener," she said cheerily as she grinned at you. Something was wrong with that grin. Who even was this girl? How did she know your name? You stared at her for a second in confusion before asking, "Do I know you?" She shook her head. "No, but I know all about you. I'm Himiko Toga. I'm a friend of Bakugo's." Your alarm started going off. Something was wrong. You had heard about Katsuki's friend from school, and this was not one of them. You said, unsure of what else to say. "Is everything okay?" She nodded. "Yeah, he told me he was coming to your place after school today. Is he still there?" Major red flags. "How do you know where I live?" You asked, and resting on the doorknob. You were ready to slam it shut at any second. "He told me, silly." You knew he didn't. Katsuki would never give out your address without your permission. You knew that. Especially not to someone like this. "He's not there," you said worriedly. You heard something fall into the kitchen and sighed. Listen, I think one of my dishes just fell in the sink," you said as you stepped back to close the door. "I should go check it out." She nodded excitedly. "Yeah, let's do it." Your eyes widened slightly. "Let's?" You know I have a lot of stuff I need to get done, and I don't have time for company at the second. I'm truly sorry." You began to close the door, but she slammed her hand into it and pushed it open. Her grin became more sinister as she tilted her head slightly, eyes focusing on something behind you. "Well, I have some stuff I need to get done too. Why don't we get to help each other?" she suggested. You suddenly felt someone wrap one arm around your entire body and use their other to cover your mouth with a towel. Your eyes widened in fear as you looked down at the hand, already beginning to tremble. You tried your others not to breathe in whatever was on the towel, but you couldn't. The last thing you remember was falling limply to the ground. Katsuki's point of view. Katsuki was getting worried. He texted you when he got back to the campus as promised, but you never responded. It had been nearly a whole day, and he couldn't take it. He was visibly on the edge, and unfortunately those around him noticed it. "Hey, Bakugo, you good?" Kirishima asked as he turned to face the ash blonde. Katsuki knew he'd been acting off, but had no intention of telling anyone why. They didn't need to know what was going on his personal life. Fine, he said plainly. The bell finally rang, and he sat up from his chair, putting his backpack over his shoulder and walking out wordlessly. He began dialing your number as soon as he was out of the classroom, lifting the phone to his ear. Hey, it's listener. Leave a message, please. Your voicemail came through his phone after several rings, and he sighed. Listener, it's me. Listen, fucking call me. He hung up on the phone and stuffed it into his pocket, beginning the walk to your house. Maybe you'd broken your phone or something after he left. Maybe you got sick all of a sudden and were in bed rest. Maybe nothing was wrong. The walk to your house was about 25 minutes usually, but with his increased pace today, he made it in 15. He walked up to your front door and raised his hand to knock on it when a voice spoke behind him. What are you doing here? His eyes widened, and he turned around to face Kirishima. The redhead was staring at him expectantly as rage began to flow through Katsuki's entire being. You fucking followed me? He asked angrily, walking down the stair to approach his classmate. You little shit! Something was going on, Kirishima said as he walked over to his friend. And you're not gonna say anything, so I just followed you. So, where are we? He grunted. He was already so worried about you. He didn't want to get into this right now. He turned and went back up to the stair, pushing down on the small circular doorbell. My girlfriend's house, he muttered quietly. Wow! His friend said in shock. Girlfriend? How long has this been going for? Katsuki huffed. Usually, he would have answered the door by now. I've known her since we were kids, but we've been dating for about a year. He'd never told anybody about you. If word got out that you were important to him and that information fell into the wrong hands, he was worried about what could happen to you. He brought his knuckle down on the door a few times. Oi! Open up! The front door finally opened, but you were not standing in the doorway. Your mother stood before Katsuki instead. Her eyes were red and puffy, causing his heart to race. Something was wrong. Oh, hello there, Bakugo. Your mother said formally, giving a small bow. Listener's not in right now. His breath caught in her throat. Where is she? He asked. If something had happened to you? A tear streamed down your mother's cheeks. We don't... Sorry. We don't know. She cleared her throat. We came home last night and she was just gone. There were a few broken dishes, so I don't know if she did that or if someone else... Her word caught him in the throat, and she placed her hand over her mouth. Katsuki stood into the doorstep, shocked. There were a million things going through his head, but he only felt the need to communicate one. I found her, he said, looking down at his feet. I'm so sorry. He felt that it was all his fault, so he was going to find you, and then he was going to stay away from you. He turned away from the door and saw that Kirishima was still standing at the door of the porch. Dude, Kirishima said, his eyes wide. Katsuki already knew what was going to come out of his friend's mouth and walked past him. I don't want to hear it, he said as he passed the redhead. His phone started to ring in his pocket. He didn't want to answer it. He didn't want to talk to anybody, but he knew he had to. What if you'd somehow escaped and were trying to contact him? His heart began racing when he saw your name spread across his phone screen, and he couldn't hit the answer button quick enough. Listener, he said, eyes wide, as he stopped on the sidewalk. Hey, where are you? What happened? You know what, don't move. Just tell me where you are, and I come for you. There was a chuckle on the other line. Well, hello there, Bakugo. That voice. Katsuki could never forget that voice that haunted his darkest nightmares. He froze for a second in utter shock until the realization dawned on him. The League of Villains had you. He clenched his teeth in anger as he began to walk again. He remembered exactly where the hideout was. He knew exactly where he was going. Let her go. He grunted quietly through his clenched teeth. We will. Tomura Shigaraki's voice spoke through his phone. Once you join us. His eyes widened as he ran. It had been almost 2 years since they kidnapped him. Why the hell were they trying again now? I'll never fucking join you, he said as his pace picked up. Very well then. Katsuki could feel his smirk. Katsuki was about to hang up on the phone when he heard you scream. A piercing, gut-wrenching scream that he knew you had to be in a lot of pain to produce. Don't you dare fucking touch her! He yelled angrily. His hurt heart as he listened to another scream. But this one wasn't a shriek of pain. It was a word. Don't! You yelled. Shigaraki chuckled again into the phone. Hope you remember where we are. I'm sure we'll see you soon. The line went dead, and Katsuki wasted no time in shoving his phone into his pocket. It was only then he noticed the rapid footstep behind him. He already knew Kirishima had followed him yet again, but he wasn't as angry this time. As much as he hated to admit it, he was going to need help if he was going to take off the League of Villains. What's going on? Kirishima asked, steadily keeping pace as Katsuki ran. League of Villains, he grunted out. Need to go. Kirishima grabbed his shirt and pulled him to a stop, making them both almost fall over. Once they were balanced again, Katsuki tore his friend's arm from his shirt and glared at him. What the hell are you doing? I can't let you! Those 4 words were so short, but so infuriating. Katsuki's eyes widened, and even more rage flared inside him. What the hell not? Because you were 3rd years. Kirishima grabbed onto his arm to keep him from running off. We're so close, Bakugo! And if you do this, you get expelled! You can't just go out searching for villains like this! I don't care. He ripped his arm from Kirishima's grasp. Guess he was going this by himself. I fucking won't let them have her. I don't care if I get kicked out of the fucking school! He started running again, not bothering to look back to see if his friend was following. In just a few short minutes, he headed to the hideout. As if on cue, another obvious scream echoed from inside the building, and he blew the door straight off its hinge. He stood in the doorway, breathing heavily, palm ready to explode. There was a fury in his eyes that scared even more of the villain he was staring at. Where is he? He demanded. Shigaraki stood from his seat at the bar counter. Well, hello, Bakugo. Let me see her. He wasn't interested in wasting any time. The pale man smirked and motioned for Bakugo to follow him, which he did. They ended up in a dark basement. He looked around until he noticed you on the floor, curled in a ball and chains around your wrists and legs connecting to the wall. His heart shattered seeing you like this, especially because it was his fault. Oh, listener, Shigaraki said venomously, you have a visitor. A light groan came up from your direction, and you slowly sat up. A light above your head was turned on, and Katsuki nearly fainted at what he saw. Burn marks everywhere, scratched skin. One of your arms was entirely bruised, as well as one of your cheeks. The rest of your body was littered with dozens of cuts and bruises. Katsuki? He asked weakly. He couldn't help himself. He sank to the ground as the tears from in his eyes. What had it done to you? He stared at you, wide-eyed for a moment, as the tear fell down his face, until he finally spoke. Oh my God, he whispered. This will be her new life. Shigaraki said, bending down beside Katsuki. This will be her forever, unless you listen. Don't do this, Katsuki. Your voice was so weak. He imagined you'd lost it from those good curling screams he heard on the phone. Be a hero. Katsuki's red eyes looked over you again. He found himself lost for words for the first time in a long time. Your eyes pleaded with him. Please, be my hero. Let me die. That broke him. He stared blankly at you. The wall were there, he imagined blasting all those jackasses and stealing you away. But now that he was looking at you in this state, he couldn't move. He couldn't think. He couldn't speak. You can still save her, Shigaraki said quietly, motioning towards you. Just say yes. He opened his mouth to speak, but no word came out. What was he supposed to do? Dedicate his life to a villainy so you could live and hate him forever, or let you die and become the hero he always dreamed of? He couldn't let you die. Katsuki, please. Your quiet voice begged. Be my hero. Oh, please do it for me. He examined your injuries. You definitely have dozens of scars for the rest of your life from the cuts, and you had no idea how the burns would affect you. Not to mention, having to live with the memory of a traumatic event like this. He didn't want that life for you. Slowly, he picked himself up from the ground. He rose to his feet and stared down at you as another tear streamed down his cheeks. I love you, listener. He turned to face Shigaraki, who was staring at him expectantly. The two engaged in an intense staring contest for a moment, until Katsuki finally spoke. Fuck you! He wasted no time shoving his hands into his enemy's face and unleashing an explosion that sent him flying back against a wall. Katsuki was grabbed by the shoulder as he heard a loud thud on the floor above. He was thrown down the ground, and he recognized one of the villains with purple skin and dozens of piercing. A small blue flame raged in his hand as he towered over Katsuki. He knew this was the guy who burned you. You soul! You fucking soul! He muttered. The door to the basement flew open, and a whole crowd came rushing down the stairs. Katsuki's attention turned to see who it was, and he was shocked to see 19 familiar faces making their way down to the stairs. Bakugo! Kirishima yelled from the head of the crowd. Watch out! A ball of blue fire was thrown at Katsuki when he wasn't looking. His eyes widened as he watched it, until a small wall of ice formed in front of him. His eyes widened as he watched it, until a small wall of ice formed in front of him and stopped it. He shot up to his feet and raced past the villain, a new surge of speed and strength flowing through him as he ran out to you. When he got to you, he blasted the chain off your wrist, being careful not to hurt you and prepared to pick up your brightest eye. Oh! You cried as he touched you. Katsuki. Oh! He looked down at you, smoothing your messy hair down over your head in a calming manner. Hey, you're gonna be okay, he whispered to you. You looked up at him. You came for me. He nodded. Of course I did. I'm gonna get you out of here, okay? You shook your head. Katsuki, it hurts so bad. Please just leave me there. He shook his head, another tear falling. No. I'm not gonna just leave you. But you have to. You whispered slowly, reaching your cut and bruised hand up to hold his cheeks. Listen, you need to leave. You need to be a hero, Katsuki. The words need you. Well, but I need you. He was outraged. He came all this way to save you, and you were just telling him to live there to die. He gave him a sad smile. You know, you're my hero, but there's other people you need to save. He pushed gently on his cheeks, trying to bring that to you. Just give me one last kiss first. He leaned down and gently connected his lips to yours, holding you tightly so he couldn't hurt you. He wasn't sure how long he made the kiss go on for, but he wasn't ready for it to just end yet. You leaned your forehead up against his and looked into his eyes as your noses touched. Thank you. Thank you. You didn't even realize Shigaraki was standing over the two of you until they bent down and laid his hand down on top of your head. Katsuki's head fell forwards as yours curled away into a pile of ash on the floor, and he let out a scream. No! He lost it. He gently pushed your body out of him and jumped up, tackling Shigaraki to the ground. He began throwing punches after punches, making the monstrous man's entire face purple. He pulled his arm back to swing again, but someone grabbed his wrist. He turned to see Ashido kneeling beside him, his wrist in her pink head. We have to go, Bakugo, she said. He could see the pity in her eyes as she spoke, and he hated it. He's knocked out. He looked down, and sure enough, he had knocked the monster unconscious. He slowly stood up, turning to where it left your broken body on the floor. He was gone. The other already carried her body away, she said. She rested her head on his arm, and surprisingly, he didn't push it away. He just followed as she led him up the stairs and out of the hideout. When they were finally back at the dorm, Katsuki just sat down on the couch. He couldn't believe what had happened. He couldn't believe what just had happened. You were tortured. You were dead. And it was his fault. Kirishima sat down on a chair across from him. You okay? He asked. Fury already knew the answer. Bakugo just looked up at his friend. No word could be found. He looked back down at his laps, put his head in his hands, and let out a sob.